we have a lot of people here and probably a lot of questions, it doesn't have to be a question, it can be a point. And actually, a lot of the things that were discussed in the last two Meet the Maintainers sessions that we had, some of them were actually addressed. There's very good feedback that we got, and we worked through them, and we addressed some of the issues. Yeah, and knowing in the project and being involved on a daily basis on what's going on. I know nothing is perfect. We are doing really well, but there are always things here and there that go down, between the cracks, and sometimes they are not noticed. Maybe this is the chance here to give them the importance they need to, if we agree. And just we had a session actually 2 hours ago talking about release management, and a few issues, a few points were made that are actually fully valid, and we really need to look at them. I'm sure here you guys would have, maybe not the same points, but additional points or feedback to the project as a whole, or input or complaints, if you want to call them this way. Yeah. So yeah, I'll traditionally we would call all the maintainers, to the front, etc. But the room is so small, yeah, and there is also a lot of, since the project, the project is growing rapidly, and we have a lot of maintainers, a lot of active contributors, and probably a lot of people who want to say something. So we will stay where we are. Probably if if somebody needs the mic for longer, they can come here so everybody can hear. But let's do it the same way we are doing. And there are portable microphones there as well, which is really great. Yeah. Yeah, somebody in the back probably. David Leach volunteers. Yeah. Yeah. So two things. One is, again, we have a TSC face-to-face end of the week. So a lot of the things that probably will be brought up here will be discussed depending on the importance, urgency, and so on. Second, this is the last session. When we are done, we want to have a community picture. Yeah. So please stay. So the picture can be taken by me in the back there. I don't know where it will be posted and how it will be posted, but I think, and if we all are going to fit in the picture, that's a different question, right? I mean, but stay after the session is done and before we go to the event. I would like to call Benjamin, who's busy with his phone, to also help moderate and drive the discussion as our community advocate, and we have here portable microphones as well. So anybody wants to start, volunteer, and go in? Yeah, Carlos, oh my God,
Yeah, so I want to bring up something that I brought up a few times before, is the website. I've just, to have a general conversation about it. I think it needs work.
It's old.
I'm talking about zephyrproject.org. Huh?
Yeah.
But GitHub, obviously, it's its own thing. So now that we've become a big project, quote unquote, I think we also need to refresh that website. So I know that they say this, and we really haven't put any effort towards it. When say we, from my side at least, but just so that we don't forget.
So what we need is, if you want the website refreshed, give us requirements and tell us what you want to see, because we keep on going, don't like the website, and then nothing happened. We try to do things, and
Fair enough.
and
there was a survey, right? It wasn't there.
And we basically tried to implement what they were telling us, and so we need proper requirements as to what will make you happy.
That's fair.
And then we will
fair,
try.
Kate. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so let's. I think to be productive, because you brought this up in the virtual face-to-face.
I did.
And Kate volunteered you, but obviously nothing happened. Yeah. So let's at least tackle this point and figure out, at least from a TSC perspective, or and if anybody actually have here any input, please help with that as well. But let's next steps in terms of let's have a meeting, as you know, and look at, you know, what needs, what are the issues, what are the general requirements, because I mean, give me requirement is usually like a very easy way to
Well-
say, to push the problem.
No, it's not just easy. It's just
Yeah.
like, okay,
Yeah.
what's going to make you happy? What does it
Yeah,
look
yeah,
like?
Well,
to
the
make you
problem,
happy?
Kate, I think
Yeah.
I think one of the things I mentioned, and I would like to repeat today, is that it's not, the contents are actually not bad at all. The blogs, the member list, etc. It's more an overall aesthetic of the theme. The theme. It looks a bit dated. It looks so. This is difficult to gauge and to express in words, but
so,
it's
so we can basically look at, point us at ones that you think look current that we should try to get
Right.
inspiration
Yeah.
from.
okay.
So point us as
that makes a lot of
examples.
sense. Yeah,
And then,
in
we,
fact-
and then we could, because we've got to do our 10-year refresh anyhow.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep,
Yeah,
that makes
okay.
sense.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Yep.
Done. Machi? You are okay. I thought you wanted to say something.
Sorry,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I have a total different question. Many customers come to me and they say, okay, and mostly the technical people, they're all convinced of Zephyr. They know the benefits. They really, the key things like, for instance, the fragmentation of the market, of the embedded market, something we're facing up like the last 25 years. Zephyr is an answer to that. But on the business side, on the more the corporate side, I sometimes have much more effort in convincing people that this is the way forward. Do you plan to make a few use cases, for instance, with a number of customers who successfully adopted Zephyr in their product and they come out with it? So it's easier for my customers or myself, for my customers or those people to convince that Zephyr is the way forward.
Okay,
we
I'll
have
start into it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. This is the whole reason we have the products running Zephyr page on our website, so that we can show examples. Our challenge is, in the embedded space, a lot of people don't want to admit they're using Zephyr because it's their secret sauce. Which is interesting, and so that's why part of the reason I'm always on a hunt for finding interesting products that are running Zephyr to show things. If there are certain targeted products that you know about and you want to point me at, I'm happy to go reach out to them and ask them to be more visible. Nordic has been awesome with some of their stuff in terms of putting us in touch with some of their customers and letting us be visible that way, and that really helped the project off, especially in the last few years. And I'm hoping more and more of our members will help make those connections so that we can actually get them visible. Certainly a lot of our consumer, some of the small ones.
So there's all those customers that are shy and don't want to brag about Zephyr. Then there's the ones that are happy to be listed on the website. And then there might be, and some of you guys might know, customers that actually want to be even more vocal about it, and send them our way, and we will be happy to work with them on case studies or white papers or however you want to call it, so that it's more than just a picture on the website, where it's actually more like, hey, 2 years ago, blah, 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 we made the decision, and we can put some nice words around it.
I think just adding a logo or like a picture of something using Zephyr on the website, that's a good start. But maybe what we need is really take a few big, use cases. Yeah. How you went through the process of selection, why, etc., and how you are using it. Or like the presentation from Thais earlier. Yeah. Going through the good, the bad. It can't be always happy. Yeah, I mean, people have also to see the downside and understand that it's not an easy ride always, and and understand all of this. So something like this. I don't know if you have something specific in mind. Yeah.
So the other ones that we've been very lucky, and some of our members have put out case studies. Like Goliath has a variety of case studies, and here's a reference of implementation using their code as well as the Zephyr stuff, and they make those case studies available. We put out white papers. We're happy to put anyone who's got a white paper of their examples. Will make me very, very happy. So we'd love to get more of them. Okay, at this point, it's just a matter of we need people doing the work to tell us what they've done and what works, what doesn't.
or even just blog posts.
Blog posts, yeah, exactly. Blog
Yeah.
posts.
So I can describe the problems as a customer of Zephyr. So what's a bumpet of problem?
Just a second. Speak on the mic so everyone can hear.
Okay. I am present at a customer actually of Zephyr. So we have currently we're using a free CPU. At some time, and for us, for example, it's main problem of Zephyr is vendors HAL. It's always is a nightmare for resynchronization and between HALs and fresh core, for example. It's difficult to use. It's so yes, year ago having a discussion about it, so it will be better, I don't know, to resynchronize something policy, how it could be implemented, what should be implemented in inside of the HAL. I talk about the code styling, for example, and so on, so on. So it's we as an end customer, we finished fork all HALs what we're using for now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
So I'd like to comment on that just real quickly about the people using Zephyr. I think there's going to be a class of products out there where they don't really want to talk about the internals of how they got there. They're talking about their product themselves, right? And so the focus is on the value that they put out there as as an end product. As someone who represents a chip company, I'm also aware of companies that use Zephyr, and they're big companies, just really big ones. But they're not out there to talk about Zephyr. They're just trying to get their product done. I try to encourage all of them to join Zephyr so that then it does improve that message, as I think it's what you're trying to get at there from convincing your company to adopt Zephyr for development. So
Yeah.
I'll also say this is probably a medium to longer term thing, because the firmware that like my company has, Tensor, while it's based on Zephyr, I wouldn't say it's a shining example yet of how you use Zephyr. It's still in the process of everything being moved over to fully use Zephyr and use the hardware abstraction layers the way they should be used. But longer term, I think it might be worth exploring. Like we're committed to having that firmware open source. We're going to open source firmware in the future. We could point people at that and say, look, here is a product running Zephyr. Here's a downstream repository we literally release firmware from. Obviously we can't do that for everyone, but I think it might be worth exploring. If you need a use case of it being done, like we can provide that.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Anything else or any other comments related to that? Yeah.
It's a different question.
Different question? Okay.
Comment? So I have a different question.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. My question might be a bit provocative, but what does it mean if a feature is supported by Zephyr, or a feature on a board is supported by Zephyr? So let me give an example here. I started with an ESP32 board with an existing project on the ESP32 build system and wanted to port it over to Zephyr. And then I had a look at the documentation and saw the device tree and checked, okay, all these features I need are there. And then I started porting. But in the end, barely anything of that was working. So it looked like no one really tested if the combination of features or peripherals you put in the device tree actually worked, but just because the device had it and you had a driver for that, they ended up in this configuration. So, and that brings me back to my question, what does this is supported means for Zephyr?
Okay, so I mean, when we are talking about drivers or like hardware support, that is like broadly on a different level than saying, hey, I support Bluetooth or I support whatever, networking or like features that we have. Yeah. So traditionally, I can say that, and this is actually something that has been changing, as was shown earlier today by Benjamin in the hardware documentation, at least that we support, is that, there was like a lot of confusion about, hey, I have a board that has SPI, or I2C versus, oh, this I2C actually has a driver and it works and it's tested and so on, This is changing right now because, we are showing actually what is implemented. Now, what is implemented by a specific vendor, and integrated with a certain board, is, these are like the instances. From a Zephyr perspective, from a Zephyr project perspective, we provide the APIs, the infrastructure, everything that allows you to do this. But if something gets merged into Zephyr for a specific driver, for a specific vendor, that is not something that we as a project can validate or can guarantee that it works or not. So it is especially when it's something that is hardware specific. So that's unfortunately you will always run into these cases, but I think we are getting better in general in terms of documenting what is really supported and what is not, but also in terms of testing. A lot of the vendors invested in Zephyr verify using at least the tests that we have, the basic peripherals and the basic hardware support that we have. And this is actually something that we are building up. Thousands of boards. Somebody was talking about 2,000 bindings, so many drivers. And that can't be like the sole responsibility of the Zephyr project. That's actually falls a little bit also to the vendors themselves as well.
So I also have a comment for it, like from the testing perspective. So you would like to see what actually works. And this is also what we have in scope for the project itself. Like Anna said, it's not really our responsibility to validate that everything works on every target, but we can shift this responsibility to vendors, and we want to have a system where they can provide the results. Actually, we had it in place, but it's being stopped and be reworked. So the vendors can send their data, or they could send their data in future, to say which tests were executed, or which, samples were verified, or which functionality. And then you can have a documentation, which will be just living document saying which checks on which feature were actually provided by the vendor that they tested it. So I think that can also help selecting, if it actually worked or not, seeing that, oh, this was really checked with this particular version and this particular test passed on this board. But this will be on the vendor to provide such data.
Yeah, he wanted to have a follow-up.
I guess it's just more or less a documentation thing to keep the expectations right, because in the end it creates a lot of frustration if things don't work, but no one expects that everything works out of the box. But if you clearly mark what is tested and what is just because the device has the driver and the peripheral, then you can manage the expectations.
I completely agree, and actually this topic came up just I think not a few weeks ago, maybe because a few weeks ago I was still on vacation, but in July or something like that, and will be discussed also on Thursday. We are looking at the hardware tiers in terms of also trying to put more effort in documentation, testing, and providing accurate information, mostly provided also by the vendors and done by the vendors for boards and platforms that are considered reference. So and there will be always drivers added all over the place, and maybe advertised as working that might not work because we are not able to test them, right? But for this tier of reference boards, reference platforms, that would be scrutinized. And just like Machi said, that would be something that would have to go through testing, and you are not, you will not be qualified as a tier 1 in this case, I think, board if you don't provide test results. So something like that is in the works and coming up. So you had a different question, right?
Yeah, my question is, let me stand up here.
Yeah.
My question is related to the community and engagement. Like for the Linux kernel, I remember there used to be this kernel janitors, and for many years there's already the kernel newbies going very well, so people can be like easily engaged into starting something. Is there already something on the Zephyr ecosystem that people, oh, this is a to-do, this is like a, let's say, easy bug fix that I can start with? Is there anything already ongoing on this or on the roadmap or discussion?
Yeah.
Well, so we have lots of, like organically, there's lots of new contributors. Like every week, it's literally dozens of people who get their first PR merged. But it's based on whatever they work on, like they have their own issues that they fix. We have a few issues identified in the repo, in the GitHub repo, that are labeled as a good first issue. By the way, hint, hint, if you're a maintainer, like someone in the community, if you want to help triage some of those bugs that you know for a fact are like really trivial to fix, feel free, if you have the permissions to do so, to help label some of those issues, because we know that students and like newbies, they tend to search for them actually, and we have only probably a few dozens available for them to hack on. So yeah, there's that. There's, I mean, Discord, which I think is a good way for people to sort of like get engaged. Yeah, I mean, I would love to chat with you if you have some other like other best practices you've seen.
Yeah, but
in the Linux
Benjamin,
kernel,
I think this is one way to do it, but I think that we need a framework around this, yeah. Because what happens is, and this is usually what happens, is somebody marks something as a good first issue, yeah. So I mean, the judgment of that actually, that's the first thing that needs to be done. But if somebody actually comes in and picks that, and submit something, and there's like if there is no agreement that actually this needs
that
to be
will
done,
be a really bad experience for them.
Then it will be a very bad experience. So there has to be like, obviously we have a lot of technical debt in Zephyr. We have a lot of it. Yeah, we have decided to address a lot of that, but it's very like the naming, the APIs and the naming conventions, and I mean there are so many things, right? I mean, if we have coding guidelines, yeah, this is another thing, yeah. So if there is an agreement that this needs to be done, and if we agree that this can be done by anyone, and then and have somebody who can sponsor that, for example, or shepherd the whole thing, then I think it's much easier for somebody to come in, join this, and start doing things without getting a lot of resistance, yeah. Because if you tell somebody, go fix this coding guideline, and the first thing they get, the first comment,
why did you do that?
Why are you doing this? Who came up with this coding guideline? I mean, this is like very bad. And this is usually what happens. So we need to establish some guidelines, or create a framework. Yeah.
I think, Daniel, you wanted to maybe?
Yeah.
Because a mentor proposed a project there, not many know about it, and we don't have a landing page for e-commerce.
Yeah.
Every project has its own mini landing page. Again, good question.
But specifically about the person who asked the question, so you look, because I think Zephyr is already relatively approachable in general as a project, right? With Discord and the documentation also is very clear, in my opinion, or it's very detailed about how you can make your first contribution. It's not something that's hard to find, or it's very So when you think about finding ideas like you don't know what to contribute, because typically what happens is people use Zephyr, find a bug or find something that's missing and contribute that. So that's the typical, right? Way, or I would argue it's probably the use case, the common use case. But are you thinking about people that have heard about the project and have need ideas about what to contribute on, or because I'm not sure what you meant exactly.
Yeah, it was more on the open source spirit of the community. Like as I said, like Linux kernel has been running for decades, and they have already I would say like a very robust framework in that sense that you have a patch, they have coding guidelines, and then you go a check patch script before you submit, and then it automatically creates a Git email for you to go to the kernel newbies, and then someone check your patch, people give you feedback. So it's more on that sense, because I'm familiar with this framework right on the Linux kernel, and then if there was something on the Zephyr community, because it's getting a lot of traction during those past few years, so that'll be great. I feel the engagement will rise up as well.
I would argue
We have
that
that.
we have
We have all of
that
these.
you described.
Everything
except
you
it's on the
mentioned, we
top.
have.
Okay, great.
Like if you open an issue, we have like if we will automatically detect if this is the first time you're showing up, so we will send you a few pointers automatically. Same if it's a pull request, some pointers to sort of like give you some heads up in advance, like thank you for your pull request. If you don't hear back from us in like a week or so, this is where you should you should head up on Discord to reach out to maintainers. I think we have a lot of that, and the check patch stuff, and lots of CI. Like if you mess up some of the mandatory code formatting guidelines or commit message guidelines, whatever, you will have hopefully really clear feedback.
The process itself is there, like similar to it. But I think what you are getting into is like I get this question a lot. People like sending me a message on Discord. Hey, I am doing what can I do? Basically, it's almost like this. What can I do? And sometimes, I mean, okay, I have no answer. Sometimes I know there's a lot. It's not like there is nothing to be done. Yeah. I mean, if you are looking for janitors, I am like probably one of the prominent janitors in Zephyr. Is that I go sometimes, I find something, I go immediately fix it and send a batch. It's easier for me. I know sometimes, it's very difficult for a newcomer to do this, especially if you're changing like a sensitive area, etc. And people become, why is he changing that? Is it just because I want to contribute and make things better, or I have an alter motives or whatever? I mean, this is usually what happens. And if we don't establish a framework like the janitor project, then it will be difficult for newcomers. And I think that's something we really need to consider. I haven't looked at the janitor stuff in Linux for a long time. I remember people like being aware of it like 20 years ago maybe, but it's something that we need to look at, Anyways,
just to be fair, maybe my question sounded a little bit like harsh on some comments. It's a very exploratory question because I'm just a few months using Zephyr, and then I found out how interesting it is. And then I'm still finding my way through the landing page, being at the events. Now I'm getting how things are working. But nice that there's this engagement. Okay, thank you.
And yes, I could agree. It's true. It's very difficult for first commit, and usually it's take a long time to accept into the mainline. It's from time to time. It's usually a lost motivation to continue and contribute and do something. But I mean,
but it's. I mean, there is a reservation here. Not because. I mean, we were talking about it earlier today. Not because you are the first-time contributor doesn't mean that your contribution has to go in. Yeah. I mean, there will be a lot of junk first-time contributions that I don't want to deal with. I mean, we have to be honest, right? I mean, But I think if there is something that is valid, is going in the right direction, it has to be encouraged and it has to be pushed all the way through. It doesn't mean that we have to accept it.
So for me, it's from my experience, kernel accept patches a little bit faster than Zephyr for now.
Yeah, I mean we have higher standards. So.
I haven't kernel since 2000. Sorry, I remember early days.
Anyway, any other questions?
I had a couple of comments. So for the one comment about testing and vendor drivers and stuff like that, I think it's really important to highlight our release process. So we have RC1, we have the feature freeze. During the RC1 phase, we really, really rely on our Silicon vendor partners to do the testing and report back regressions, because what you described as a regression is something that we really want to stop before we get to the release. So if we can catch those bugs before they hit users, that's extremely important to us as a project to ensure that our users see that we're a reliable RTOS. And also the second comment there, have you ever join the Zephyr Discord, because that is a great place. You get real-time responsiveness. I'm on there. I mean, you can ping anybody, but generally there's always someone there who's willing to help you walk you through your first PR. Say like, I don't know where to start with this or this subsystem. There's always someone there to help you.
Yeah, follow up to that CI testing effort. Let's say here. So follow up to the testing portions. Follow up to the testing portions. Which is initially commented about, say, with comparing with the Linux kernel where we have the kernel CI, which eventually doing both the compilation system and also deployment with respect to vendor hardwares. Not all of them, but eventually the EVKs or respective hardwares. And means like when there is a new set of changes on the respective SoC or hardwares, it would eventually be compiled and deployed. And then deployed by meaning it's really tested or test cases in the real hardware eventually. So considering that particular fact, Zephyr by means like we do CI testing, twisters, compilations, and QEMU-based emulations testing and so on. But how about like, is there a plan or a idea to get this into real hardware testing? So that like, for example, somebody added a hardware like 2-3 years before and then never touched it after. And then I wanted to resume something, let's say connect some peripherals on it. And then I found that like it's completely broke because I cannot rebase the 3-year code changes and then like figure out the Git blame for 3 years. And it's super long or super lost. And then I change the hardware altogether. So is there a way, idea, plans in terms of having a common responsibility to have a continuous deployment as well on the real hardware so that it doesn't break for longer?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. So we are actively working on that. We actually have budget for that, and we are looking into solutions, and we will have something, hopefully not in the far future. Yeah, hopefully, soon enough. Yeah. So we are looking into this. Yeah. Right now, as you just mentioned, a lot of our testing is for at least in CI is emulation based. We have a lot of things happening also on hardware, but that's basically not project driven. It's driven by the various vendors. And our goal and going back to that tier 1, and like classifying the hardware and giving some more priority and or prominence to some platforms and testing them in our own CI so that when I submit something, I immediately get results. I don't only run or build in most of the cases, because usually if you don't have the hardware, you just build. And building is not even 1% of, it builds, yeah, but does it work? We don't know, right? And we want to get into this space where we can verify at least certain functionality. Yeah? If it's not covered by simulation, we should be able to get to that. And we are working hard on this, yeah, so.
I'll say that your example, though, of the 3-year-old board that nobody touched for 3 years probably wouldn't get captured in this scenario, because we really just want to capture, when we call tier 1, but boards that are actively supported.
Yes.
So
yes.
His example's a kind of a bad example in a sense, because we probably,
But this is a general problem.
Yeah, I know.
In Zephyr itself, we have boards that were introduced when Zephyr was started. Yeah, and we are. That's 10 years ago. Who's using these boards? I don't know. Are they still functional the way it is in Zephyr? Probably not. We really need to audit. But this is not limited to Zephyr. Look at Linux. There are, hundreds of drivers and whatnot that nobody's using. They stopped using, and you and your luck. Yeah. So
I'll say that. If you look at the velocity of change on Zephyr, it's really high. It's really high. Yeah. As a vendor that we've got like Nordic and Scilabs and ADI and others, that we've got a lot of platforms in which we're supporting Zephyr on, and we like in my case, we try to do regression tests every week across the latest and greatest of Zephyr, because we need to see it from our board's perspective and our SoC's perspective. And I'm sure every other vendor is doing the same thing that are active in this project, because the recognition is the high velocity of change it's a good and bad thing, because it's good that we know there's a lot of activity and engagement, a lot of change, but it also means a higher level of responsibility to, to test. We can't test on every release point because the amount of change from release point A to release point B is humongous. It's mind-boggling how many changes there are that you'd have to bisect through.
Yeah, maybe the example about the board itself is a bad one, but eventually the idea is, let's say, the same person. So with respect to the Bluetooth portion or respective IP blocks internal to the SoC itself, when it is testing from 3 years old, so the SoC itself not being tested on that particular PCB on the board version. So you can consider not board itself as an example, but any form of peripherals or IPs internally in there. And to address on the question about testing internally on ST or Nordic or Scilabs, yeah, I mentioned like this is kind of scattered. We also have this for the custom PCBs and so on and so forth for the customers, which is done with Jenkins to the doing the deployment internally. So the question of more of how do we organize in terms of not scattered efforts across multiple SoC vendors, but having a one unified platforms like kernel CI for the Linux kernel to deploy and test it. That was primary of the question itself.
That's exactly what we are looking at. Yeah. So we will have that. I mean, we are running out of time.
So maybe can I have just a quick comment back to this discussion as well?
Sorry?
A quick comment maybe to this discussion as well too. Because
because we need to close, and I actually want to have other topics if there is anything, because this is your last chance to complain and trash Zephyr.
I just maybe wanted to reverse complain. Like, we can't expect the upstream to fix everyone's problems, right? At some point, if you care about a super specific board that only you use, then maybe it's your responsibility to test it, right? Maybe it's you, or maybe you buy some services from a downstream, like a company which will publish a downstream and maintain it for you. But I think it's totally unrealistic to push like you're a very small subset of problems and expect the upstream to provide you with like a 5-star service around everything and anything.
Yeah.
And let's be realistic, right? And let's not push too much burden on the upstream to make sure the upstream keeps on innovating and is not like burdened by those things.
No, I agree. Yeah. You want to say something?
Yeah. Maybe this does not even end in a question, but my perception is if I use Zephyr, I want to use it for my project, for my big application, and I have great support in the Zephyr tree of all these samples for single points. I have this extra repo about an example application, but I do not find any Zephyr application in GitHub except maybe the connectivity project, which also helped me to see how things are really done best practice. And it's unfortunate, and I know that you cannot change that probably, but maybe it's also me not finding all the applications on GitHub.
So I think there are some projects mentioned in I think it was a wiki page, Zephyr awesome stuff, something like that, but I'm not sure if it's maintained. But there are a couple of other projects, for example, the Libro Solar project, which I'm working on, which also has lots of Zephyr-based applications.
I think this is one of the things that we wanted actually to improve, like in terms of ecosystem, is all of these things that have been happening like in so many different places. Try to create like some structure as well, like module. There are so many modules or projects, let's call them, that actually use Zephyr, and thus you can add them to your manifest and do all kind of things like the EM Learn that was mentioned earlier in the previous talk. That's one of them. We are starting to add this in the documentation. I'm not sure about but connectivity is also there as well. Yeah, so there are actually a few that are missing from our documentation, and we are working on moving everything into this, kind of structure for things that work with Zephyr. Yeah, so that's definitely something that is happening. Yeah. So we are out of time. We are 1 minute off. Obviously, we have an event later, so please don't leave yet. We still, you can approach us, Benjamin, myself, Kate, if you have any specific questions or any specific inputs or feedbacks that you didn't want to share here for whatever reason, yeah. and we can definitely help and try to solve any issues or address any feedback.